to Ramos and Razor Blades Productions, where chaos
Well
reigns
done.
in all of our content. I was totally ready, and then Kat asked me if I was okay, and it broke me.
Producer is on it tonight. Let's go.
But anyways, welcome to this evening of Chaos Commentary. We have a special guest. We'll go ahead and let her introduce herself quick, and then we will reintroduce ourselves.
Hi, I am Katie, Katie Cunningham, she, her, and you'll see me pretty much everywhere on the internet as Kay Cunning. That's it. I'm sure we'll get into the rest.
And as
Huh.
always, I am your Chaos Goblin, Kristen, and then my partner in crime.
I am Kat. I am the producer and the sometimes co-host of these Wednesday shows now, as is expanded. And here we are. So the show, for those of you who have not seen it before, we talk about tabletop role-playing games with sometimes guests, sometimes just amongst ourselves, from two different perspectives. One with Kristen, who's the much more experienced player, and me, who up until 6 months ago was a much more casual player, and now that has gone out the window. So we'll have to kind of modify this premise a little bit, I think, now.
Her knowledge grows.
It's getting there. I've only DM'd one game so far, but I have one planned for October, so that should be exciting.
What are you planning on running?
I am going to run a My Little Pony one shot.
Oh my god!
We're going
I'm
to do it
super
near
excited.
Halloween.
Oh, that's cool.
And someone floated the idea of My Little Ponies go to Halloween Town, so I'm trying to figure out how I can make that work. So we'll see how it goes. But I have the source book. My ex-husband actually, he has a shelf of role-playing games that is literally about 4.5, 5 feet wide and almost as tall as I am, and I'm 5'5", and it is so stuffed that it is now broken, and he needs a new shelf, and it is a solid wood shelf.
I
So
have a shelf recommendation if you want one later. Um, this masterpiece behind me. It's metal, it's ugly, but it can hold like 200 pounds on every individual shelf.
oh, see, that's what he needs because he probably has like literally 1,000 pounds of role playing books.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
This is my Pathfinder 2 shelf, and that was the reason I had to get a new one because Pathfinder 2 books are concussion.
Massive.
Yeah,
Hmm.
you know, so
They're
they
like
will.
college textbooks,
They are.
basically.
They are.
Yeah.
They're thick boys. So
I admit to have I've never even actually opened a Pathfinder 2e book. Like most of the game shops and stuff I look at, I don't come across it all that often. And while I now have friends that play it, I didn't really have friends that played it before. So as somebody who is very much into the Pathfinder 2e, enlighten me a little bit on why you love it so much.
I love it.
Yes.
It is um one of the reasons I love it is that it has an answer for everything. So if you play, are you guys more experienced with like 5e, 3.5? We're in the
5e
realm.
I'm
is my least played game.
Hmm.
I've played Vampire a lot, Immortal, and Scion. Like Immortal and Vampire, I think I played the most, and a little bit of Scion. So 5e, actually, I didn't play up until the last couple of years. I played some other iterations of Dungeons and Dragons in the late '90s briefly. So mine's a little more scattered. So, but I can pretty much pick up wherever you go with it. So
Oh, yeah. It is. I like the fact that if you compare it to some other modern systems, like Vampire's a good example where they don't spell things out. I co-run a Vampire 5e West Marches game that is set in Atlantic City in the 90s.
oh,
Um,
nice.
oh, it's great.
That's
That's
when
Um,
you
like
run with
prime
dogs.
vampire time. That's like prime masquerade time right there.
and actually, we're moving through time, but one thing that frustrates us is that so many things are left up to the GM. And so many things you have to like negotiate as you go. And I do like with Pathfinder, they spell things out. How high can you jump? Here is the rule. If you want to jump higher, here are the feats. Um, as you build your character, it becomes very personalized, that there's like feats like every level. So as you're going along and building your character, there isn't really a standard build. Um, And you can actually very easily, as you're going along, go, oh, this thing happened to my character. I've decided I want to add on this other thing. And it doesn't hurt your character. Like some systems where you take a dip and like, oh no, I found the Lord and now I have to take a dip in paladin or cleric or something. It doesn't hurt. Like it actually, it's still like the numbers are still really solid. It's a very robust world. I know a lot of people like build their own worlds, which is cool. But then sometimes, Galarian is like every fantasy trope you've ever wondered about, just kind of smashed into one world, and they somehow made it work. And they even like, why have one undead nation when you can have two nations ruled by the undead?
I mean,
There's
why not?
yeah, 'cause that was it. Who was it's the emotional support undead?
The
Uh,
her,
yeah,
her,
yeah, yeah, they have that. Um, it's actually my summoner has a wraith as her basically her emotional support undead.
We have shirts that say emotional support undead if you want one. I will link our merch right now.
yeah,
Uh,
I made that one on the fly. She's like, we need a shirt, and like 20 minutes later, I'm like, here you go.
I actually have it right next to me.
Oh yeah,
but I would say why I love Pathfinder, especially 2E, is that the choices you make mechanically, like if you're like, I want to make, oh, that's really cute. To make a character that can specifically like do this, the mechanics support the idea rather than, well, I'm just gonna like, put a cheap paint job over something and say it works like this. Um, I like that. And as a GM, it's
mm,
actually easy to run because the players know they can look the roll up. How high can you jump? It's in the book, and they will. Or actually, to be fair, we look it up on Archives of Nethys. So, because all their rules are so
that
I
helps
do
too.
love any of the systems that have stuff on one of the reasons I love 5e is D&D Beyond makes my life so much easier. Like, "Oh, what does this spell one of my players have do? I'm gonna go look."
Yeah, I like all the stuff that has PDFs, and then I like with Cyberpunk they have the Cyberpunk Red app, which makes it so easy to make your character.
I haven't played with the app. Yeah, we
Oh, it's
have.
so cool.
Oh, I have because it's been a thing that we've been like I've got to play in like not really a game of Cyberpunk. It was like the setting, and I had the book. We never actually used the rules, because it was like just barely a one shot. But I'm like, I have wanted to play Cyberpunk so bad, and it had just come out, so we didn't have any of the cool stuff yet.
Well, we do have a Friday night game that Dawn has guested on if you ever want a guest role.
Yeah.
I
I
mean, she'll find something for you to do. She'll find something.
I don't leave. I work from home, and I've actually worked from home for a decade. So, like, I don't leave
Nice.
the house.
Yeah, it was, a little intense, going straight to work from home when I had just started a flex schedule where I was able to work from home 3 days a week and in office 2 days a week, and
And
then
then
we went
COVID
to
came.
full for the pandemic, and, yeah, I spend a lot of time not leaving the house, and my weight shows it.
Yeah, I've got an exercise bike right there for that very reason because it got real. And actually, I appreciated all the doctors during this time when I got sick just stopped mentioning it because they're like, everybody's in hell. So
I
we're not going to guilt you. 'Cause
I left the house for work because of my job, but I still gained weight because I drank a lot that year.
yeah, thank God for black box wine. That's got me through.
See, I
Um,
drink craft beers, like stouts and porters are all I drink. So
I do love stouts and porters, but I have to be careful. Beer makes me like extremely like uncomfortable. So it
mm,
has to be carefully, like, okay, am I okay with being uncomfortable for a little bit and popping some antacids?
yeah, some
Like,
people do get like that.
yeah.
I just
I'm,
I just get a little
I'll
bloated
drink what I'm
sometimes.
in the mood for.
Mhm.
I can't do wine though. It gives me headaches, like any of it.
Yeah. I have a friend that has that too, and it sucks because we go out and she's like, "I can have none of this," because she also has reacts to beer.
Oh no. See, w- I drink dark beers and whiskey.
Mhm.
That's those are my things.
Yep. I am
I
lucky.
vote that our test for YouTube streaming is, happy hours with friends, and we all just sit on video and drink and chat.
Yeah, because we definitely cannot do that on Twitch.
No. I, my husband is a former bartender, so
Oh.
I love you. I w You know what I really love too is a sidecar.
I learned how to make an old fashioned after I realized that I really like am into like whiskey a lot more than I realized. So I learned how to make an old fashioned. But our go to is just whiskey and ginger beer.
Yeah. I love old fashions. You should probably
Mm,
try, a boulevardier.
okay.
Um, I like a boulevardier, which is basically a Negroni, but with whiskey.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's really simple because it's just 3 liquors. And
I
everybody's like,
mean,
"Oh, so fancy," and I'm like, "It's literally equal parts," but it's tasty.
that's really all you need. So
Mhm.
Usually the best alcoholic beverages have the least amount of ingredients. Like, give it 3 or 4 ingredients, any more than that, and it's just too much.
yeah, I don't need to do alchemy in the kitchen unless I'm cooking. That's different. But if I'm just making drinks, I need to keep it simple because I don't have time for that.
But anyways, how long have you been playing TTRPGs?
Oh, geez. I actually started in high school. I'm 42. And in high school, the way we ran games back then was either at lunch, on a piece of graph paper that we would like draw out the tiniest little maps you've ever seen, um, or we would use slam books, which I don't know. The kids don't do that anymore. I was told they have Snapchat. Uh,
They do. I'm a little older than you, and yes, that's all they have now.
I never got to do slam books, I just had the slam books about me.
yeah, we had the slam.
Actually, that's what I had too.
Yeah, We, um, we had the slam books, and we would actually do, like, two-person, three-person campaigns through, like, writing them out,
Mhm.
which was cool, and it wasn't until the first time I actually had an in-person game was we were started on 2 and then got 3 because I worked at Wizards of the Coast, retail, briefly, and, oh, it was amazing. It was as amazing as you think it might have been, and we would get the books for super cheap.
Oh, I
So we got
bet.
yeah, it was like we had a really nice collection. So 3 and 3.5, um, and played Amber. I played a lot of Amber. If you do either of you know what Amber is?
I've heard of it. I have not really gotten too much further than knowing that it exists.
Yeah, so there's this series. It is I love it. It's one of my favorite series. It is not something to take modern sensibilities into and read. But basically, Zelazny wrote the Chronicles of Amber, where it was about gods in like the ideal universe, like the platonic ideal of a universe, and they could travel through all the shadows and echoes of the universes that fell beyond. And
You
it's
know where
based,
I've heard it. Sorry.
yeah, so, yeah, it's kind
Well,
of
my ex-husband played in a long-term Amber campaign for years with some friends and would talk about it all the time. I was trying to think where I had heard of Amber before, but I had never seen the books nor played it. Now I remember. Sorry.
and it is a book. It's fascinating to go back and read now because it starts in the 60s is when he started writing it, and he wrote it until the 90s when he died. And you can actually watch the fantasy genre change over time because he's writing like for that time period. He's actually matching like the style of
Mhm.
that period. So it's really bizarre to read it. And I actually, my thought was, why can't we have short fantasy books? This was great. I finished it in one sitting. Um, in the game, you're playing the children of the like gods, and you have the cool powers too. They are very intense games. It is heavy on role play. There's no dice. No dice in the system. And that was the first one I got, like, heavy into. Um, and yeah, it has always been kind of there as part of, like, the way I socialize. My social groups have
Yeah,
almost always had that based, is its core.
makes sense. So yeah, no, I have heard of it, and it sounds cool.
Yeah.
Just I did not know there was a book series associated with it, but the way you're talking about how it starts in the 60s reminds me of Heinlein. I read a lot of Heinlein, and
Mhm.
it is not for this those
Oh,
books are not books for this era at all. Like
yeah. Although
if
if you read contemporaries of Zelazny, you're like, "Okay, he was a lot better than they were." You
yeah,
kinda have to accept that. It's like
Yeah.
yeah, it's there are definitely like some where you're just like, I can see why you would have thought that at the time, but now that's bad. Categorically terrible. But
mm,
then he slips into some weird like timeline incest stuff, and it's like, you're sketchy, sir. So
oh, yeah, there's a reason why the unofficial name for Amber is Kissing Cousins, the
mm,
game. But you are technically all cousins of each other, so what
I
are you gonna
mean, if you're demigods.
yeah, and it's very
it's a
specific.
family tree, it doesn't fork.
No, it literally doesn't. And it's just so it is kind of hilarious. And yeah, you kind of, after a few sessions, you're like, well, we're just gonna give up on that particular thing being a problem. Um,
Yeah, and let it go. Well,
yeah, and it's very funny because it is pretty much living fan fiction when you're playing the game.
yeah, yeah, I can see that, especially since it does have the books associated with it. So, I personally just started like really leaning into the RP, like when we played home games. Like I was just like oh, I roll the dice, I got this. My character does A, B, C, D because I
Mm,
some of my shyness, like I have a lot of bravado and I'm loud as hell and I will talk a lot of shit, but there are certain things I am very shy about, and that was one of them. So,
mm,
so I'm
It's
just
coming
getting
out
into
of her shell.
working on it, working on it. I think Friday I did pretty good, but
mm.
um, you know, so hearing about these games like Amber that I didn't realize were just heavy RP with no dice, that's cool to me because I think that sounds like fun. So
It can be. And yeah, I think that was like my big that's and it's one of those systems where every time I meet another Amber player, it's almost like meeting another heroin addict where we're like, "Are you into that too?" Like,
give me more.
it sounds terrible, but it's really hard to find other Amber players who
I
have
mean, I
problems.
would be happy to play when I have time.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
problems. Yeah.
think about that for a minute. You're on screen way more.
Me, never.
And I appreciate that because it's like I recently had to like I was co-running a West Marches game with Don and another friend of ours, Dayton, and I was like, we need to shut this down. Like this is way too much of my time that is getting eaten up in this, and I would like to have other games. Because one of the things that Paizo, the publishers of Pathfinder, does, they publish adventure paths. Um, and some people were like, "Oh, published adventures," but I'm like, "No, these are really good." Like, we have a lot of, like, openness, but I'm like, "I have no time to run any of these. I have no time to be in any of these. I'm always doing this thing over here." So, yeah, it's been a year of rebalancing for me.
I am very much one of those pantser DMs where, like, I will plot out stuff, like, in the game, like, some dream sequences and stuff like that, but I cannot follow a freaking adventure to save my life. I'm just like, "Okay, I don't wanna look at the screen, I just wanna interact," and even if I read it really, like, the one that I've actually run on stream, I read through it, like, 6 or 7 times, and I still didn't retain enough to properly run it.
I even was
But if it's
right,
my own world, I can just make it up.
and that's totally a different, like, I'm an obsessive planner. It's the way I manage, like, my not like, like I don't have heavy duty anxiety, like capital A anxiety. I have like drugstore level anxiety, but it still must be managed. And I manage it through organization. And like, and my players will make fun of me and they're like, yeah, you really didn't need to make 6 maps ahead. And I'm like, yeah, actually I did. 'Cause that's, you know,
I mean, I do that too. I have like so many things that are like organized in certain ways for the channel, and I'm like, we have to organize them this way
yeah.
and put them like this. Otherwise, I will get lost, and then
Mhm,
it's this no bueno. We have so much stuff that we do, so
yeah. Yeah.
everything's got a place. Wish my
Yep.
house was like that.
Oh, same. And honestly, even if I can't even blame it on the people I live with, because if I was alone, it would be a mess. Except for like very specific parts. But if I can put it in a freaking notebook, I'm good. Like,
I suck at organization completely. The only reason I'm ever organized is cat.
But you talk to people, so I maintain it still works out okay.
yeah,
Because I'll talk to people if I'm introduced, like I have like an intermediary to connect me to them, but I will not just go out and start talking to people. No, nope, not for
um,
me.
yeah.
So
Oh,
no, go ahead and finish.
Go ahead. I was just making noises.
Oh, okay. So I have a question. So with Vampire the Masquerade, there
Hmm.
is a very like set kind of idea of aesthetic, I feel like, for like that whole world of darkness thing. Now, I think that if you have seen, and I don't know if you've seen these, the John Wick films,
Hmm.
but the aesthetic of the John Wick films, do you think, like, I see it as if that was like the world you're walking through, that's kind of the aesthetic I see all the
Yeah,
time.
I could see that. We tend to go more clerks in my
Hmm.
game. Um,
Nice.
it is definitely a bunch of, kids who left the safe havens they came from to set up in Atlantic City where there's nothing. Now they are getting more powerful, so suddenly they're having courts come in and say like, "Oh, you're more powerful, therefore you need to be noticed." Um, so it's I think you can do all kinds of aesthetics. Now I tend to not be as big a fan of the, blood cocoa version of because you run into that occasionally and I don't think it's a good fit with the system because it's a system where you can literally lose control of your character and do terrible things. And so sometimes playing house and doing all these cuddly cozy things in there can be rough if that's like the
Mhm.
direction you're going. It can be a real like head snap. I personally like digging into the dark descent of characters and struggling to hold on to humanity and struggling to
Mhm.
like get through. If you want to play a bunch of vampires and not have to deal with the consequences, like you can do that in other systems.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, like yeah, like right now, Dawn is actually running a game where we're all Dompiers and we all have the same sire. We call it Dompiers with like a
dollar
dollar
sign?
sign S. Um, and it's we it could be called daddy issues because we all have the same sire. Uh, we're not cool with him, but like you can do that in a system and not have to deal with the consequences. Um,
Right.
Vampire is very much about the consequences of your action of everything.
Oh, yeah.
So
Absolutely. And and that's and see that's I don't really have any issues with the consequences and the ideas of that. Like the vampire games I played were more serious.
yeah,
There were consequences, but just the way that we would play it was always much more serious than the idea of playing it like clerks actually kind of sounds like fun, to be honest.
yeah. It's fun, but we also don't back away from like we are trying to survive. We're trying to hold on to what we have, and that it's very difficult because everybody has to make choices as time goes on. And boy, do we love our messy criticals all the time.
Yeah, and that's what I like about cyberpunk, because there's you have to, if you get too much cyberware, you start to lose your humanity. Like my character is not really big on having cyberware. The only thing prior to the catalyst for her her who she is now happened. The only cyber she was ever going to get was just the basic stuff to do her, preferred net running job that she was studying to do in school. And then she lost her arm, and that's so she has a cyber arm, and
Yeah.
she doesn't want any more of that. But like her brother is the complete opposite. He's got cyber legs and all this cyber bullshit, and he's always like, "Ooh, how about that one?" And she's always like, "No, no, no."
And then there's Lobo's ex, who is now dating Dawn's guest character, who has 8 cyber legs that can either be spider-like or octopus-like.
And they're
Oh,
on stilettos. Yeah,
I
and
highly
that's
suggest watching, the episode where DK actually guested as that NPC.
oh, she's fantastic.
Amazing. But yeah, -14 to humanity.
Yeah, and and there are consequences for it, and it's very much more. Our game is much more dramatic. Like after the fallout from when DK and Don guested as their characters, myself and my in character brother, like we kind of had it out while he was drinking, kind of thing. So we, I, I like this game because we lean into the RP a lot, and it's really fun.
which kind of like I do enjoy that. Now there are times when, I have, you know, I've had DMs where I'm like, I would really love to use my character sheet. I spent a lot of time on it. I would love it if I could shoot something in the head. Um, just just saying.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but for the most part, I do love like big role play. Actually, I'm running for two of my friends an amazing adventure, Mask of the Red Death. Not Mask of the Red Death, it's called no, Night of Grey Death. Night of the Grey Death. And it is set in Galt, which in Galarian is basically what if revolutionary France, but the revolution never ended. So its revolution's been going on for 50 years. And it
Mhm.
is so very Galty because you go to a mask and there's a drum stop
Woo!
and there's guillotines everywhere. It's great.
That sounds fun.
Oh yeah, and the session we just had, 0 fights. 100 role play running around trying to figure out what's going on, getting like, there will be fights just looking at the stream, Don. But first one was, 3 hours of everybody running around town, shopping for dresses and trying to figure out like the secret, what's going on, which I love. I do love that kind
Uh-huh.
of stuff.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of like the games that I play in on the various streams and the games I run where we can go 3 or 4 episodes without a single drop of combat. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Like
all RP. And like there'll be some roles for like because it's always nice to, especially like if you're interacting with another person, to roll like insight because it's always fun when they fail and have no idea who's in front of them.
And to be honest, like if you're on a stream, it's not a bad idea to limit the amount of like fights you have. Because when I was on a stream where we could always tell, like when we got into a fight, it would like grind the stream to a halt. Now the table doesn't really matter because it's a little bit more casual. Nobody really cares if you're, not being engaging at that moment because it's just you. So like I do love a stream where we have more like role play moments.
mhm.
'Cause the one we have with Dawn, the Dawn Pierce one is very role play focused. Surprisingly, the other one I'm on, which we are playing, it's basically Street Fighter but fantasy. Literally, we have to run around and beat up rival gangs to get honor so we can be in the yeah, it's great. I play a screamy bard who basically screams at everybody until they don't do what she says. Um, it's an ability she has where she can inspire you, and then you get a free Strider Strike. So she literally screams at you, "Hit it again!"
Finish him. You are the one yelling in Mortal Kombat.
Um,
Nice.
but we have a surprising amount of like role play opportunities, and those are so much fun,
Mhm.
to go through.
I
I
always feel
do
like you
have
need to
to
have
say
balance.
oh, yeah.
Oh. you know,
I
um,
I lucked out when I started streaming and then also getting especially with DK running, the Saturday night game, and her amazing ability to DM, uh,
Mm.
I've brought from that, uh I've found ways to make combat more engaging. So, like, when my players do get into combat, like, I'm still describing a lot of stuff and I'm like still pulling things out of them, like, well, describe what you're doing. And now they do it on their own and it's amazing.
yeah, that makes a difference with the battles. Like we have had some good episodes where we haven't rolled dice for battle at all, like our going to the food court episode, or the last
Oh,
episode we did on Cyberpunk, we didn't roll any dice for fights.
mhm.
We just, got drunk.
I think
Yeah.
there's only been 3 brief fight encounters, I think.
And I did some net
Yeah,
running a little bit around at least
yeah.
some of them. So, there's been a little bit of that, but it's been a pretty RP heavy game. So, which is cool. I like that. I've been really getting into it. So, um,
I mean, some of my favorite scenes from our vampire game, um, the West Marches one, is the characters sitting around Denny's, which that's their Elysium, is a Denny. Um,
I mean, that's indicative of the 90s for most of us.
it's like I'm like, let's go peak 90s. And
That
actually,
yeah.
yeah, they have a succubus club. It's under a game store.
That also tracks for that era, that kind of thing. Just even if it's like just fictional, that tracks.
Yeah. So,
In the
and it's
90s,
like,
I was in a small town in Wyoming, so I actually
Oh,
never
really?
even ate at a Denny's until 2003.
oh wow. Yeah, we grew up in our town, like that was where you went because it was one of the few places that wouldn't kick you out for being a teenager. Because that was a big thing in our area in the 90s where it's like, oh, you're a teenager, you are illegal. You can't there. But the Denny's would not kick you out and wouldn't
No,
card
they
you.
didn't do shit.
No, they didn't. Um,
I've spent a
Yeah, I
lot of
remember,
time in Denny's.
some of the first real gaming that I got into because I didn't really get into gaming until my 20s, and I was down here in Phoenix instead of in small town Wyoming, where T&D was the devil. Uh, but we actually, like, planned out and played a couple of our sessions, in a Denny's booth, just sitting there, just drinking our drinks, hanging out, maybe having some fries here.
I mean, I've gamed in a Denny's before. I mean, yeah, that's a almost a rite of passage in some ways, I think. At least in the 90s, like you got down here in the early 2000s, but I know in the 90s you did eventually do some RP and at least roll some dice in a Denny's, or we played Magic the Gathering in Denny's,
mhm.
stuff like that too. So that was pretty normal, pretty standard. Um, but yeah, no, very interesting just seeing how things have changed over the years with gaming.
Mhm.
One of the things I am curious about, because we talk about this off and on throughout different interviews in the channel, is being women, being
Mhm.
in gaming, and you're like me, you're in a double whammy where you've been through tech and gaming. You know how have you had a lot of the crappy experiences that some of us had
Yeah.
with guys, or
The
is that like
gatekeeping and the
yeah? What has that been like for you from your side of it? Because you've
Um,
been gaming almost as long as I have. So
yeah. So one of my worst experiences, and I felt very blessed that I started in Amber because Amber trends heavier in women. So it's a
mhm.
much more balanced crew that you're going to end up with. But when I was in my, D&D game, my first one, the GM very much just wanted a game with the guys. And the problem was the guys wanted to game with their wives, and they were like, but we won that. And that was like, and it wasn't like the wives forcing our way in. It was, or the wives and girlfriends. It was the guys going, but there's a reason why I have courted a woman with her own dice. So I could play with her. And like, that was the point. And
Yeah.
he would, oh my god, he would kill our characters. He nerfed my bow. Like, and it wasn't a fancy bow, it was just a bow, and I had all the bow feats. So I was basically like a sniper. And he would get so mad. He's like, "You need to be in the action. You need to be in things space." I'm like, "No, I have a bow. Then
Like,
I
there's an entire
Your
reason for
range.
being a ranged fighter.
yeah."
Yeah.
I'm like, "I'm a ranger, and I have a bow, and I have every bow feat. Yes, I'm gonna use my bow." And he was so mad he couldn't kill me. Um, and it
What a
was just
dick.
he was, and that was probably that was one of the horrible experiences. I have mostly good experiences. Because eventually, you have to be kind of ruthless and like go, okay, not gaming with you.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
have
there's many tables where I've only lasted a session or 2, and I'm all like, "Nope, bye."
I the GM who told me, and I was like, oh, I want to play a character, and I don't want her to be attractive. And he's like, no, as long as you're at my table, you're the only girl. You have to play an attractive character. I was like, what?
Bye.
I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And so I didn't say bye, but I did wait until he put the romantic interest on the table, and then I turned him into a zombie. And he never did that again.
That's fantastic.
But it was one of those things where it's like, you run into it. And you also run into it that I am very good at organizing things. So I don't like chaos. So I will tend to organize everything. When are we gaming next? And some groups respond really well to that. And some groups, you get this weird mommy complex with them where they're like, I resent you, but I need you. And I'm like, oh, fuck.
Oh, that shit's awkward. Yeah,
Yeah. And
I hate that.
yeah. And you get like that weird. So yeah, I think it's getting better, but not as good as they think it is
Oh,
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
absolutely.
that's where I'm at. I literally before this interview, when I was sitting over at a coffee shop today, I read an article on BuzzFeed about women in the nerd space and the ways that they have been gate kept over the years, or just been shit on, or like, working in tech support, if someone calls in and they hear a woman's voice, oh, can you transfer me to a man, please?
Mhm.
No, this is what you get. That's it. I probably will do a better job.
Yeah.
You know,
I do like that, like, there's definitely, even in the streaming community, those corners where there are those gatekeeping happening. But for the most part, from what I've seen, streaming has opened up gaming so much
Mhm.
better for women so that they actually, like, can sit at the table and not just be the eye candy.
or we make our own table, which
Yep.
is what I think is super cool.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, like I notice, and I don't know, and you can speak to this too. I've noticed just in the short period of time that I've been part of this community, because until I started doing this channel, I was not part of the online tabletop community. I lived under a rock. I knew it was like existed in some way, but I had no idea what this community was like until I joined it. But I'm finding that as a woman, being in this sphere seems to be easier than the old school sphere of going to shops and being
Yeah.
in groups, that other people are running predominantly by men and things like that. I find that the two are this is way better, and has been like a much more positive experience overall.
It's easier to filter, I found, when the 2 terrible GMs I mentioned, I didn't have much of a choice because one was my ex-husband's best friend, and so it was like, well, either we don't game or, like, I put up with him. And the other one, I worked with him. So leaving
Oh,
that group was extremely awkward. Uh, so I was like, "Huh, I can't really leave this group, and maybe I'll just teach you a lesson instead." And that worked. Um, Alone after that. But, it's I like being able to, like, seek out, more women, and they are easier to find. It's also a little easier being one of the older ones, one of the elders of the gaming community. Um, because I don't know, it's like, I get a sense of somebody when I'm like, "Oh, you're gonna be a problem." Like, I've seen
yeah.
it enough
Mhm.
times, and some of the ones that are new are like, "Oh, I'm sure he'll be fine," and I'm like, "He's just angry." Like, "Honey, no."
Yeah, and
No.
I do love that there's a trend with the women in the online gaming community that when I mean, it took a while for some of them to be outed and for the women to get that gumption up to actually out them,
Mhm.
but they are outing the abusers. They are outing the people that are gatekeeping, and it's either they're completely shut out of the community, some of them have completely just like deleted every bit of their presence online after. There's still some that kind of hang around the edges and like try and force their way back in, and a lot of the new people are what uh they're like, "Oh, they have a lot of followers. They must be a good person." And that's
Yeah.
one of the big things about like the follow for follow or the follow Friday or any of that stuff that just really kind of turns me off about it is there's so many lists that people are like, "Oh, go follow Kristen." And then in that same list is somebody that I know is a bad actor in the community. And like if it's somebody I know well enough, I'll reach out to them and be like, "Hey, so this is what's going on." And then they'll, "Oh, I'll stop promoting them," kind of thing. But
Oh yeah.
people are speaking up more and making it so that it's harder for them to get those footholds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the operating the bar for being able to operate and be that person has gotten a lot higher, which is great for us, you
Mhm.
know. And just being able to be women creators, I think, is really cool too, because there was a time when, even a few years ago, if we had all like been like, "Hey, let's start a gaming channel," it would have been like a whole shitstorm of like men coming in and be like, "Well, actually, you
Uh-huh.
have to do blah blah." And it's like, and it's as I have not had that experience at all since
Mm,
joining the community as it stands now this year.
mhm.
And I think it's hella cool, honestly.
Yeah.
I've been impressed.
Yeah. And I've been at all women tables before and they're really cool. And there's a different feel. And one thing I noticed is like it's way more collaborative, but also you kind of walk away with everybody has a job. Like
Mhm.
it bizarre, like everybody had a thing and everybody agreed to do the thing that they were going to do. And everything was shared. Um and
Our
then
Thursday night game is all females and not like that.
I
Tuesday,
Tuesday, sorry.
Tuesday.
It's
um
one of the tea days.
I'm not saying all. I'm just saying the ones I'd been at.
Yeah.
Um collaborative. And usually that would break down the second one of them's like, I told my boyfriend about this group and he about this game and he thought it sounded really cool. So could he like join us? And it's like, oh no, Heather,
Nope, nope.
Heather, you
There's a
ruined it.
You broke the first rule of female Fight Club.
Don't tell the boyfriend.
Right. Don't invite the men folk. They can watch.
Yeah, it was just, but it can be a really cool vibe. And I found that most of them ended up like, I don't know if you've watched what's the name of the movie? Bridesmaids? Um,
I have
Yeah.
not seen that.
you get that vibe. It's a gross, gritty, down and dirty vibe.
It's
Um,
the women acting like the men, and I love it.
yes, it's
I mean, I act like that's how I act in real life anyway. So
but it's interesting to see if you have somebody who's normally more like, just closed off and like careful, watching them in the second hour just start like letting loose and being like nastier than you've ever seen them. It's great.
that would be cool.
So, and
I'm
it's
like a
hard.
12-year-old boy, so
Yeah.
no, I have not had the opportunity to play in a game that is all women. I'm always at mixed tables, but the tables that we've had on this channel, that despite being mixed, I always are very welcoming, and we do have a lot of that collaborative thing going on. We all figure out our role and we'll do our things. There's every once in a while we'll hit a skid where someone needs to be like, no, hey, we need to do this. But for the most part, it's been cool. But I can imagine, I see it with watching Misguided Magic, the vibe that's different with all of them together. And like
Yeah.
they collaborate a little bit more than they think. But Scoria is a little like girl crazy, and Beetlebug is the crabbiest thing that you have ever seen on the planet, and
I
I
just
adore
think it's
her.
hilarious that I built Scoria to be the charismatic one, and as soon as she starts to try and talk, somebody else takes over, and then they roll a bad persuasion roll, and I'm like, I have a +6 to
I feel that in my soul as face of my one group. I have an arcane trickster and she's the face. And then there is the brawler who occasionally will try to like step forward and go, I've got this nubbins. And I'm like, you don't, but you don't.
Yeah, you don't, this is, no, you're not gonna do this right now.
Fair, and that it's very in character. That it's like there are times when he's like, "Ah, this is wordy stuff. Go do your thing." And then there are times, "Oh, we must talk warrior to warrior." And just like, "No, we need to lie to him.
Yeah,
You
that's,
lie."
I feel like that's what in Cyberpunk when Lobo starts to talk or try to get involved in the talking, because my in-game brother, his intelligence is 2.
Oh no.
And he did it on purpose. He did it on purpose. He wanted a big, like, stupid dude that could kill things. And he came up with the idea of having a sister. So he asked me, and my intelligence is high. So I kind of like, in some ways, I'm his handler, or, I just kind of like keep him not killing everything every second, So we have this interesting dynamic.
You're his carer. You care, so he doesn't have to.
So
Oh, he cares. His empathy is high. His empathy is higher than mine, actually. I had to add points to empathy because it was going to make it really hard for me to do certain things. But my
Mhm.
empathy, when I started building Obscura, was 2.
yeah.
So he actually has a higher empathy. I think his is like 6 and mine is like 4 or something. So he feels a lot, and he very much is very feeling, but he's dumb, delightfully dumb. And I adore this character, like how he built it. It's so cool.
And he does it so well.
Oh
Really
my god, he
does.
does.
So I played this gangrel in Vampire um, way back, and she had an intelligence of 1. She had a 6th grade education because she decided that was enough for her. Um, and the dichotomy was that I, as the player, and I was always the note taker and I would follow everything that was going on. I would catch on that something was happening, and the other players were so busy off like in their dramas, and I'd be like, don't I wouldn't know this. And so occasionally I would my clue of you guys need to pay attention is me saying, "This sounds like some nerd shit. I think you two need to listen for a sec." And then, oh, can we roll?
See, I'm the opposite. I am the note taker that I'll have like 2 or 3 notes or like a big part that like I really know I need to remember, I'll put down. But there's a lot of games where literally like last night for Misguided Magic, I'm pretty sure the only note I wrote down was Scoria has more bitches.
I mean, that's accurate. That for Scoria right now, I think that's the important note, is that she is collecting them.
My note taking is obsessive. I have actually all my old note like journals up there, and there's like a system for them. I've tried to actually back off of that a little bit and take less obsessive notes because I was missing parts of the game, and because I was constantly writing. And most of the time, if you see me in a stream, there's a lot of me doing this, like looking because the note's over here. Um, and yeah, I was that kid in class too. I always had obsessive notebooks that I would write down every word that was spoken. I'm getting better. I'm getting better.
I
I
Um,
have
also think that I
notes, but
absorb
they're
more
terrible.
when I'm not taking notes, and so I think
I
that
have notes,
helps.
but they're like really discordant. Like for the games, they're really discordant. Like there's like some things that make sense, and there's other things where I'm like, why did I write down walk to the door? What the fuck was
some-
I doing?
Sometimes the notes I take are I have to post them to the rest of the group and said, "What was this note?" Because one was like butt plug room, and I'm like,
Solid
"What
note.
did we do? What did we do 2 weeks ago?" And remember, oh, it was the room with the weird door, and yeah, it was kind of like the butt plug. And then like, oh yeah, okay, we got treasure there.
You use a descriptor that just confuses you later.
It, I'm
You
like,
did that with what was it? Oh shit. There was something you put in Evernote about a game idea or something.
Oh,
Something with oil.
I woke up from a dead sleep and I was like, "Oh, I have an idea for a game. I need to write it down." And then I found the note later and it was continue on with other things. I got to look this up now.
She's gonna have to go find it. We still have it. We still have the evidence of it.
mm,
But no, my notes aren't nearly as obsessive. They're really kind of sad. So I just have to kind of like log it in here. and pay attention, and that's it, you know. So my note taking for other things, like I write, so my notebooks for my notes for that are like,
Mm.
though that's where it gets kind of crazy. Like I have a highlight key, I have like it separated by pages, and then I have it like translated into like Evernote with different like sections where you can link to the sections that link to other sections. That's where it gets crazy for me. But for gaming, I need to pay attention.
Mm.
So, and plus I'm running the show in the background too. So note taking doesn't really happen. I just have to rely on my memory or go back and watch the VOD. So
These days, what I actually do when I'm GMing is even if it's a private game, it gets recorded via OBS, so I can like go and watch it later, so I don't have to like keep exact notes. Um, and God, there was another thing that I do. Oh, the reason I actually take notes, one of the most important things for me is not details, it's order of events. Is actually
oh yeah.
get muddled for me later. If I can remember the order an events happened in, like, and usually we will say somebody else is, if I'm taking notes, somebody else is dealing with treasure because we have a spreadsheet. We have a complicated, many tabs, there's formulas. Because, okay, my home game is a linguist, a sysadmin, a lawyer, an IT specialist, and a developer. So it's like there's a lot of tech and like very precise things going on at our table.
Yeah, I can picture that, knowing of all of the people that have been through my life, I think the only one that I've never had in my life regularly is a lawyer. So everybody else, yes. So yes, or I am that person. I one of those, you know. So
Yeah, yeah, there is nothing loosey goosey about like us keeping track of loot. It's the most important thing to us, which sounds terrible, but yeah, we do get real.
I mean, if you get good loot, you want to keep track of it. Like I keep track of my own stuff. Like I have this cool tarot deck that Kristen actually got me a physical one to go with for Obscura for Cyberpunk.
I
And
have that.
you have this one?
Neon Tarot
I am
or
almost
Neon Moon?
okay. There's a box down there that's all my tarot card decks. Yes, I'm almost positive it's like bright pink and blue.
Here, let me pull out some of the cards. We're gonna have this moment here now.
Yeah. Yep.
I have like 17 tarot decks.
Yep. I absolutely have them. I actually make not the box.
Mine are in my at my altar in my room, so I can't go retrieve the rest of them. But
Yeah, I can't tell which one it is, but because I make bags for them.
oh, okay.
So,
I
but
have a desk from 1919, so some of mine live in there, and then the rest live on the shelf next to it. So I have like the Weaver Tarot from Threads of Fate
oh, nice.
and their Empyrean deck as well.
Hmm.
And then their Illuminate deck, which is like a magic 8 ball in a deck. So those are the ones I use regularly. This one is new and is based for the game. We've just got to figure out the mechanics behind it. But it's like a program for my Netrunner. It's for
Very.
I
her
finally found the
deck.
note.
Oh,
The
yay.
only note I left myself was petroleum ghosts.
That's right.
I kind of like that.
I have
I
no idea what it was about. It was in a dream. I woke up and I'm like, I need to write this down.
ah,
And now I just have this random petroleum ghosts that I'll
they could
eventually,
be on fire. They could be oily. That's terrifying.
right?
You
You
know,
could do
that
a
could actually fit pretty well in Cyberpunk with some sort of toxic waste. All the nuclear wars, you know,
Yo.
or it could
I
be
also
something.
have a random one I found where it's like, idea for a cute small creature is a hugger mugger.
oh,
That one's pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie. That's pretty good.
oh.
I have some good random stuff that comes out of me.
Yeah, she's good at the random stuff. So, and then I just organize it. So that's what we did with our game. Like, she came up with like all the she did all the research for the pantheons because we wrote a game
Hmm.
and released it for the Pocket Quest challenge this year.
Cool.
So it's called Camp Gallowglass, and
Mhm.
basically the theme for the whole contest was summer camp. So we came up with summer camp, and Kristen, we did our players, you're children of gods, kind of like Amber and a handful of other games. I mean, the trope exists,
Oh
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but your, you know, your parentage is one god, one human, and in the summer you are all sent to this camp on the Isle of Man, so you can like use your powers and just be yourself without having to hide the godly part of you, and you get into fucking shenanigans. And she did like all the research for the gods and the word salad, and then I went through and I organized it all and did all the mechanic stuff. I'm like, how about this mechanic? She's like, yes, but how about this? We had like some really cool stuff going. So yeah, so that was the thing. We actually have wrote a game.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, we need to play it. We need to plan a day where we can play it on stream. We haven't done that yet. We didn't play test it at all. I literally finished formatting it for release hours before it was time to turn it in.
But friend Chad has offered to play it or run it for us so that we can play it on stream with a couple other people. We just got to actually schedule it. But we're saving scheduling stuff for after our trip next week.
Yeah, we're going to go dark for a few days so that we can actually go on a vacation. So
I mean, it's going to be more gaming, but
I mean, do we do anything else anymore? I don't even date. So
I've been wanting to like go do gaming in the woods because we live. I'm on the East Coast, and if you drive like hour and a half west, you get mountains. Not big mountains, but nice, rolling, pretty mountains. And there's like cabins you can rent, and there's wine country, and it's like, oh, this would be perfect. Like,
one of the things I've really wanted to do was get a group of people together to rent a cabin Airbnb in like a really rustic place, preferably when there's snow because I live in Phoenix and I miss snow. And then we all just like sit in front of the fire and play games and
and that is like, I would love to go out and like do that, but it always falls apart. Because first, then two of our friends are like, oh, we don't drink, so they don't want to go to the winery, and I'm like, damn. But then it's like, okay, it's just it's hard to organize because adults are the worst. Um, I
it's a
miss
pain in the ass.
when I was in my early 20s and we were all poor as church mice, and the only thing we could do that was relatively free was game. So we would literally go over to one person's house on Friday night and be until Sunday evening, leaving only to go and come back. Um,
I did
and
that in my early 20s with LAN parties in my apartment because I was the only one who had an apartment. All the rest of my friends still lived at home.
yeah,
So they would all come set up their computers in my living room and sleep on the floor.
mhm.
And
we're
we would
not
game
gonna
for
get into the kind
days.
of parties I had in my early 20s,
Oh, no.
Um, yeah.
which might
Yeah.
then.
None of it involved gaming on the computer or with paper. That's a whole different thing. It's a whole different kind of game you played.
I had a whole different like I started gaming in my early 20s. Like the first consistent game I ever played was actually with Kat and her ex and a couple other people of Immortal. Uh I never played more than 3 or 4 sessions of D&D anything previously to the last few years. And then I got about 3 or 4 years ago now, one of my friends was all like, "Hey, I wanna run a game, come play," and I'm like, "Okay." And, like, we played in that game a little bit, and then we switched it up with different characters, and then we played a different game, and then I ran some games, and then
Yeah, because then all of a sudden she comes downstairs one day and is like, I want to start running games and DM, and I was like, okay, cool, let's go, let's
The
do
way
it.
the first in-person game I GM'd, because it was a group that was pretty stable at the time, and everybody had run, and but everyone's like, okay, it's time for somebody else to run who hasn't run, and I hadn't, and they're like, you're the new GM, and I'm like, I've never done it. They're like, best way to learn is with three other GMs sitting in front of you. And so basically, like the first few combats I wrote, there was no GM screen. It was just down. I'm like, here's the things I found. I think I want you to fight them. Is this too much? And they're like, well, we'll probably live. And like going through it was very like open, but that's how I learned.
Yeah,
Um,
I had my, ideas and, like, already had combat planned out and stuff like that. I made the mistake of having 7 people at my table, 3 of whom were GMs,
well,
and at least one of them was very much a backseat GM.
Two of them were, I think.
yeah.
Now
This
I
book was really good in that they once I was going, they're like, "Okay, you're good," and they would just like not worry about it. We did have my friend Steve, who had this eidetic memory for rules. And it's like, Steve, what is the rule for like blast radius and this? And he's like, oh, that's in the GMG. I think it's on like page 75, second column, about halfway down. He would,
that's Eric with Cyberpunk.
it was amazing. He's amazing.
That's
And
super helpful with that.
yeah, and so they were good. Like we all tend to be like it's still a group that honestly we still have most of them that still come to the table. Um and we're respectful of that person is GMing, it's their call. If they need help, they'll ask. And there are times where even my husband will go like, what's the fucking again? And we'll look it up. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah, no,
oh,
I think the only real issue I had was the one that would, text me after game
blah.
and be like, "For future reference, this is how this actually works," and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, on one of them, I had actually homebrewed the creature, and so it didn't have the resistance he was talking about, and I'm all like, "Well, no, it wouldn't have that because, while yes, it's an undead creature, it's different enough that it is still susceptible to poison." So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's always fun to deal with. And it's like, and there are times where I'm making, and I've had to like tell it's like I had to make a decision. I was seeing something you weren't that I'm like, oh, that one character is real low on health. And maybe I just, want to like, have this combat end early and more easily than I had been expecting.
Oh,
I
I'm
don't,
absolutely the DM that adjusts a creature's stats on the
mhm,
fly as we're playing. Like,
yeah.
if they're taking it down too quickly, I'll add HP. If it's, like, totally decimating them, then I'll make it, like, grab something that it was actually looking for off of one of the players and fly away.
I tend to not adjust HP in TUI because the numbers tend to work out, and it's one of those weird things where you don't add too much because it's weird. But there's nothing saying there's not something around the corner. Like
Right?
I love like, oh, you were loud and wave. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Um,
with 5e, the balancing is
yeah.
absolutely horrible, and that's why it's like the fixing it on the fly kind of thing.
Oh,
But,
absolutely.
it also doesn't take into account things like magic items and, like, the effects that those have. So
Yeah.
what they say is a deadly encounter, depending on things they've found or certain feats they've taken and stuff, it could actually be a easy encounter.
And it
Yes.
tends
Or somehow they just like fumble their way through to victory somehow.
and there are times like and actually my husband and I were talking about this earlier about like the times that the players definitely wrecked an encounter earlier than I thought. And I actually am a fan of just letting them because it's not as if they haven't been on the struggle bus before. Usually, the previous session, they were absolutely struggling because nobody could roll above a two. Everybody was just like they couldn't get anything together or working. Sometimes you punch a dragon and it dies, which literally happened. I'd been building up this stupid dragon and somebody punched him in the head with a feet and it died because I failed the fortitude save. And I'm like,
I am notorious for when going into combats as a DM, rolling horribly for the bad
She's,
guys.
she's so bad at it. It's become a thing of amusement, and it's hysterical because it's so bad sometimes. Like she gets
I
so
think
excited
there
when they
was
roll good.
yeah,
yeah,
there was this one, before streaming, before any of that, I was running a home game, and they were going against, like, a literal horde of zombies. I had to keep adding zombies because not a single zombie could roll over an 8 on a D20.
It sounds familiar.
It was
Yeah.
the
Can't remember
first,
which one that
run
was.
at Artena when you guys were just outside of Sea Meat.
Oh yeah, yeah. I blew through a shitload of those zombies. I'm just like, bye. Like it was no big thing. Was that when I was playing Bite Marks or Beatrice? I can't remember. I think it was Bite
That was
Marks.
Beatrice. That was
Oh
Beatrice.
yeah. Oh yeah. I had a rocket witch, and she just was like lighting shit up, like left and right. Like these
That was
zombies were
the
not.
game where I was all like, "Yes, do homebrew," and I was a new DM, and then I'm like, "Shit, this broke everything."
It wouldn't have been so bad, but there are a few of them that needed to be reined in. You helped me with mine because it
Yeah.
was the first time I played D&D in like literally like 20 years. So I needed a hand, but so mine was okay, but it was some of the other guys in the party that were just like, I mean, except Gordy, he just made a murder hobo and that was fine.
But it wasn't an overpowered murder hobo.
No, no, he was perfectly reasonable about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like some real like new GM energy when you're like, I'm gonna homebrew literally everything. That's what I did with my first like campaign. And
That's what
I'm
And
she
like,
did
to be
too.
fair, Artena is now what I'm playing on stream, and I've created like I've got the entire continent, I've got all of the backstory for where things are. I created 13 deities. Like I have put a lot into this, so we're playing that on stream. And then once they take care of, it's probably gonna take a season or three for them to actually take care of what's happening uh in
yeah,
this world.
I'm just
And
excited because I
then
finally get to guest.
yeah,
and
my
then, they once they finally take care of that, because there's a maelstrom surrounding the continent that has been surrounding it for 600 years, cutting it off physically and metaphysically from the rest of the world, and only the Feywild like, the Feywild is more, manageably accessed than anywhere else on the prime material plane.
so funny story. The first game that I GM'd, like I was fully like in control. Literally the same thing. I had an island and a storm around it, and the players were in a town because the entire island was like covered in this like miasma, except for the towns. But they hadn't been able to leave the town in God knows how long, but they finally found the MacGuffin that would get go visit the other town. And I figured that was a good way to like offer them choices, but then also I didn't have to do the whole island at once. Although they were real mad when they found out. They're like, "Oh, Katie used MacGuffin. Okay, beginner GM, whatever." Like that's fine. They didn't fight me on it. They're like, "Yeah, we're gonna collect the trinkets," and then they realized when they're halfway through that they were collecting the soul of a murdered god that had cursed the island, and they were putting him back together. And they're like, "Damn, God damn it! Do we
I
have
can't
to?"
give it away on stream because, of course, if I do, one of my players will watch this. But I will message you later with, like, how I have this building.
Just when we cut off for the night because we're
But
getting
that's
close
true
to that
too.
time.
Yes, it is past 7. We've just been having fun chatting.
Yeah. Next time we'll have to get both you and Don on, I think,
Ye
because
Well,
that
I
would be
told
fun.
Don in chat that if we do the, happy hour thing, that it should be the 4 of us for the first one.
I saw that. I saw that. That'll be our YouTube only series. That'll be our grown ups series.
Yeah,
Watch
Oh,
4 gamers get drunk on YouTube.
yeah. I'll just put the box here. I'm very.
I'll just sit here with my bottle of whiskey right
Mhm.
here.
I will just get an entire jug of margarita.
It'll be a good
Mostly
time. We have ice chest. I have a Darth Vader ice chest. So
But thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us, Katie. It's been fantastic. I already feel like you're an old friend. Thank
and
you to
I
everybody who
feel
came.
I feel good about it because you grew up in the gaming era that I grew up in because we're the same age. So we have like all sorts of things in common.
Have to say war stories.
We do. Fucking Denny's.
But thank you to everybody who stopped in to hang out and watch. Again, I've been Kristen, and I feel horrible because I've been bad about making commands for our guests. But next person do outro. I'm being
Uh,
awkward.
Hey,
I've
tell
been
us about what you're up to.
Um, I am Katie, and right now I am up to I don't know. I work in ed tech. It's kind of a crazy time for us, so I've been under a rock for 2 months. But my Twitter is Kate Cunning, and if you want to talk about West March's stuff, feel free to ping me. And Pathfinder 2 and stuff like that. And I am on two streams, Dump Years, which we play vampires, and Fist of the Ruby Phoenix, where we basically beat up other people for fame and glory. And that's what I do days.
What days and times are they? So we know where to
Or
find them.
um they Dump Years is on one Monday a month, and it is on Roll the Roll. And the other one is on, I'm looking at it now, D20 Save. D20 Saves, and that one is every other Thursday. Well, actually, this Thursday is when it'll
Okay,
be back on screaming at people.
awesome.
Thank you,
And,
Don.
and as for me, I'm Kat. Find me as Autumn Knox on Twitter, and the producer behind all the scenes here. Fridays, you can find me on Cyberpunk at 7 p.m. We are off this week because some of the players have life stuff, including Dragon Con. And then we're off next week because Kristen and I are going on a vacation and we really fucking need it. So Cyberpunk will be back on the 16th of September. Wednesdays, you can find me here most Wednesdays now for Chaos Commentary and Chaos Curiosities. And then we have Kristen stuff.
All the rest of it. On Mondays, you can catch my 5e homebrew in Artena. Madness takes Artena at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. On Tuesdays at 1 p.m., we do have Watercolored Wizardry, where the lovely Maria has been doing character art for all of our streams.
So cool.
She's gonna finish up for the Thursday night game, and then she's looking into doing digital art for the cyberpunk characters, and that is very exciting.
I'm excited. I'll get my first character art.
And then on Thursdays is at the Threshold, our friend Chad, who does his homebrew game. Oh,
That's
also on
tomorrow.
Tuesdays, I totally forgot about Misguided Magic, because yeah, the
You are
Misguided
off your
Magic,
game tonight.
all femme cast, and we are getting attacked by trees at a fancy party because
Yeah.
It is Tuesdays at 4:30 Pacific, where you can watch Kristen gather her bitches as well.
and watch Beetlebug hide stuff in her folds.
And lose
We
her
have a
damn
hairless
mind.
tabaxi old lady
Played by the youngest member on the cast, which is fantastic too.
who is the grandmotherly character to my purple fire genasi.
This one's hiding things in folds. I'm
Yeah, she'll hide notes in folds, and she's like, "I take it out. It's probably a little stained." Or when she casts infestation, it's all of the lice and bugs from her body that go and attack.
Yeah, because she doesn't bathe. She had to bathe when they first got to this town and was real offended by it.
We love Abby. She does an amazing job as Beetlebug.
She is like, out of all of our games, she's one of my favorite characters. I just fucking love it so much.
Otherwise, I believe the only other thing I have is on. So hard to spell when I'm.
Exquisite Corpse presents on Saturday nights.
Yes,
She
I
plays.
put. Well, I'm trying to do the shout out in the chat at the same time.
Well, that's why I'm covering you with Not Dead Air.
On Saturday nights, I do play Candy. We are apparently back this Saturday, and then I will miss the next Saturday because I will be on vacation. But we're traveling the decimated world to collect dragon scales, which, since it's modern times, but World War III happened in '99, the dragons are tanks, and I've got to actually, as a hacker, put together all of the pieces to make our own tank. But that is fantastic. Also, we love everybody over at Exquisite Corpse Presents. They also have Divine Intervention on Monday nights, and they are going into the finale this next Monday with 4 guests on top of, or no, 5 guests, 4 or 5 guests on top of the or 5 regular players. It's gonna be huge.
That's some mayhem.
But thank you again to everybody who has come out and hung out with us, and we will see you later.
Bye.